All right, good afternoon, you guys.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Sherri, for having me speak. She knows I like to talk a lot, so this is a very brave offering of her. But I'm excited to be here. My name is Micca, and I am, if you want my formal title, I'm a registered dietitian, but I prefer to refer to myself as a diet dropout.
Yes.
I like that.
And I think part of, Sherri's message today is the power of me is kind of channeling inside something different to make some changes. And really the heart of what I do comes from a very different place of where I think a lot of people would expect a dietitian to live and breathe. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I got started. So I've been a serial dieter since I've been about 6 years old. My first diet attempt was when I was 6.5. I was on Weight Watchers. And it continued all the way up through, probably the last 2 to 3 years, I would say. Dieting got less and less, but becoming a dietitian was kind of my mojo to try and control things in a more professional setting, if that makes sense. So I grew up with a mom, God love her, and I do, but we had a lot of low-fat things, and it was always about the way we looked and how we thought, and we were really good if we had salad, or, we'd have a really good walk after dinner to work off those calories, and by the time I hit my 20s, it had reached a pretty unhealthy pattern. So became a dietitian, worked in the clinical setting for a while, worked in the hospital, ended up working in a weight loss clinic, and for a bariatric surgery program. And I really enjoyed it, but I found that my approach was really different than a lot of other dietitians. And people would sort of look at me funny because oftentimes where people were saying, you have to be within this calorie range and you have to be logging things and you have to be exercising this much, my message really started to come from a place of what feels good to you. What foods are you not including and why? Why are you not happy when you're eating? What are the thoughts? When you say that you're a bad person when you eat carbohydrates, where does that stem from? And that's kind of where my message and my soul work kind of started to blossom. So I spent 9 years in this weight loss surgery program. My message was different to my patients, but it was still very in the box and still very rigid and still very structured. People kind of lived and breathed by MyFitnessPal and going to trainers and doing so many, minutes a day, and that was how they based success. The scale was the only way that people thought they were successful, and I knew that it was time based upon my journey, and after working with people that I knew I was meant to be connected with to do something different. So I left the clinical hospital setting and started my own business, and now I have a private practice called Flexible Fork. And I always say it's the home to diet dropouts and learning to love your damn self again, because I think we are all very much, we learn to be prisoners of food and prisoners of how we eat, and we don't see calories for what they are, which is energy. We don't see hunger for what it is, which is a request for fuel. We don't see being satisfied as a positive thing. We see it as guilt. And I think that there's a lot to be done and a lot to be said in terms of switching our mind frame on that. So that's kind of where my soul work kind of comes in. And it's very non-traditional what I do. In fact, it's kind of interesting. I had dinner with my grandma last night. She's 90, and she's on Facebook, which is hilarious. And she says to me last night, she goes, "So why are you telling everybody now that they can eat anything that they want?" I said, there's a little bit of magic to that. But she's like, "I just don't understand." She's like, "How do you get thin doing that?" And I think it goes under the premise of it's not about getting thin, it's about being healthy, right? It's about being healthy, and that looks different for everybody. And so if we can sit in the way of thinking that your habits, Sherri's habits are going to be different than Jeresa's habits, than our, everyone else's habits. When your habits start looking different than everybody else's, you're on the right track. Okay? When they start looking like everybody else's, there's probably a little bit of individual work that needs to be done, because we have to be able to sustain what we're doing, and we have to be able to, it has to feel good, and if it doesn't feel good, you're not going to stick with it. So my little piece of advice for you guys, what I always tell people when they start working with me, because they automatically think, what are you going to take away? And I laugh because I say, I'm not taking anything away. In fact, I'm going to challenge you back. and I'm going to ask you how you're going to make everything fit. And they look at me, and a lot of times I get really wide eyes, and I get some anxiety, and I get some fear, because people say, well, how am I supposed to lose weight if I can eat anything that I want? Or how am I supposed to, get healthier if you're not putting any regulations on things? And what we start working on is, in order for this to be something that lasts forever, you have to be able to learn to color outside of the lines. It has to look different. And so I really challenge all my clients to be, when they say, I'm going to a family gathering and there's going to be donuts and there's going to be pizza. And I always say, how are you going to make it fit? Because not eating it is not an option.
That's right.
It's not an option. So how are you going to make it fit? And we do a lot of strategizing from, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm scheduling myself into my day so I'm not starving by the time I get there, so I can eat the pizza and have a donut and have good control over it. Or maybe I'm going to look at, the next day, maybe making a little bit more of a balanced choice. Or if I'm going to have pizza, maybe I'm going to put a vegetable with it. Adding things to what you're eating as opposed to taking them away feels so much better, at least in my mind. I'm like a 2-year-old at heart. If you tell me no, I'm going to get really mad. I'm going to stamp my feet, and then I'm going to usually want it 20 times more than that, and then I'm going to overeat it. And I lived in that world. I did. I would tell myself that I didn't like cookies because it was, dietitians can't like cookies. They just can't like cookies. That would just be insane. And then I would go home and I would eat 24 cookies. Because clearly I like them. Really, a lot. So a lot of it is looking at, how are you going to make things fit if taking it away is not an option? How are you going to invite all of those foods to your table and make them feel comfortable? How are you going to feel comfortable with that? And in my practice, the name of my business is Flexible Fork. And that's a lot of what we work on, is the why of eating. Why are these negative thoughts there? Where do they stem from? Where does the need for perfection in eating come in from? Why are you not embracing your body? And when your body's asking you for fuel, which is hunger, what is scary about that for you to be able to honor that? And it's a hard place to come into. It's challenging, and sometimes it doesn't feel very good. And change doesn't always, it almost always starts out as not feeling good. But if we keep at it and we keep kind of working towards it and reflecting on it, it can end up being a really great thing. So that's kind of the place that I work within, is figuring out, how are you going to get it all there? Why are you eating? Where are the guilty thoughts coming from eating? I'm also very non-scale based, so I always tell people that inquire for my services, if you're looking for success to be shown as a number, I'm probably not the dietitian for you. And some people look at me like I'm crazy, and that's okay. It took a while to get used to that. And other people really embrace it. And I think we have to give ourselves permission to make changes without the scale validating it. And so I'm very non-scale based. We focus a lot on lifestyle changes and how that feels. I do a lot of brain weighing with my patients. So do your clothes fit? Can you move better? Do your joints feel better? Do you feel confident when you walk out the door? What are things that you notice that in terms of your relationship with food that you haven't felt before? Those are all things that are going to make your journey be sustainable, as opposed to relying on the scale for it to be your judgment, which is really, the scale is just gravity, right? It's just gravity. Maybe you need to go poop. Maybe you need to pee. Maybe you need to drink something. But the scale isn't the end all be all of things. So my challenge to you guys today would to be is, if you've ever struggled with food. How many of you in here have dieted? How many of you were successful with it?
Well, I was. I had gastric bypass surgery.
Okay. Yeah, so
I
I lived and counseled in your world for 9 years, and I think with any change that we make, it has to be realistic. And even with gastric bypass surgery, the changes have to feel good. And I always would tell my patients, they don't operate on your mind; they operate on your stomach. So you have to be able to figure out the why of eating, because if we don't figure that out and have peace with it, and have peace with ourselves within it, it makes it really, really hard. But if you've ever dieted and you've ever not been successful at it, that's normal. because really 95% of people that diet, they don't sustain it. They're not meant to be sustainable. It's never meant to be sustainable. So a lot of it is getting back to that place and that piece of food where we learn to start inviting everything back and starting to look at how do I make it all fit and how do I love myself in the process. So that's kind of been my charge, and it took me a while to get there in terms of really owning my story, because I think as a nutrition professional, everyone expects you to be perfect, and I'm definitely not. I've come into the season where I'm like, last night I ate French toast and bacon for dinner, and I'm just like, and it felt really good. It felt really good. But you know, it always makes me sad to see that people have to get to a place where they have to give themselves permission to do that. And I think we're all really worthy and all really special of doing that. And there's a way to find that balance. So know that it's out there. If you're struggling with eating or if you're struggling with your weight, know that it's out there, and know that there is a more peaceful way, a more peaceful process to get there. And what everyone's doing in terms of rules and restrictions, that's really not the norm. That's what society wants us to think is the norm, but it's not. It's not.
And so can you share how they can utilize your services and follow what you're doing? And I know you have a Facebook group, so
Yes,
can you talk about that?
So my business name is Flexible Fork. I do have a private group called Undiet, where we do a lot of just like daily inspirations. We do a lot of different talking. I'll find articles and I'll kind of probe people on things. I do have one-on-one services. My website's the same, flexiblefork.com. Try and go live. I post a lot as far as just things that I'm seeing and really just calling things out, because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I have thoughts of reality where I'm just like, this can't possibly be normal that somebody wants me to do nothing but eat lettuce all day and then I'm supposed to just feel great about this. But they told me I should feel great about it, but I don't. And so sometimes just seeing somebody say it and be like, okay, this is normal, that I don't think this is normal. Like, to have that validation, I think is really important. So I try to call out a lot of the stuff that's out there. A lot of, restriction breeds rebellion. The reason why you're overeating the cookies is because you're not allowing yourself to have them at all, and bringing just some of that peace back to your mindset. So I try to do a lot of engaging posts like that, working on some different intuitive eating online courses. So intuitive eating is really where you focus more on listening to your body and dropping diet mentality and not relying on the scale, and listening to when your body says it's satisfied, and moving your body, not exercise, but moving your body in a way that feels good to you. And I think it's a much more peaceful approach to go, because I think that once we can find those things that bring us happiness, and that's including how we eat and move our bodies, I think everything comes together. So, yes.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yay.